Welcome to Wildlife Outdoors with your host, Russell and Jose. If you have a passion for conservation of the outdoors, or you're enjoying a calming hike in the mountains, an exhilarating kayak trip on the river, feeling a fish on the end of your line, cooking on an open flame in a primitive campsite, or stalking big game, just waiting for the perfect shot, you're in the right place. So put on your boots and polarized sunglasses and come along for the ride.
Welcome back to another episode of Wildlife Outdoors. We have an exciting episode today. It's a long time coming. We've been trying to get this guest on, so we're extremely excited to have him on. But he is an accomplished author, a world traveler, a lifelong learner. Please welcome Steve Ramirez. How are you doing, Steve?
That is quite an intro. I'm doing great, and I'm pleased to be here with y'all. Looking forward to our conversation. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, welcome. Yeah, we are extremely excited to have you on. We've had quite a few people on that come from all sorts of different backgrounds, and we just try to learn from one another and hear all the exciting stories, and we know that you have bunches of them. So for those of y'all that don't know Steve, when I said an accomplished author, he has numerous books, numerous works out there. He's been in Fly Fisher magazine. He has a series of books. It's the Casting series by Lions Press. And there's 3 books out currently and another one coming out later on this year, I believe September 1st. So if you haven't picked up any of those books, they are great books. They're basically all about how human interaction with nature is and how to learn yourself and how to become yourself and how to learn more about nature in its own. I'm sure Steve could give a greater description than what I can give, but that's what I've gotten just from reading about all 4 books. Unfortunately, I have not read all 4 books. Or 3 books that have been out. Have you picked up any of the books yet, Jose?
I am sad to say I've not yet. But I definitely plan on, reading all 3 and then the 4th whenever it becomes available. But it's kind of funny. So I learned of Steve, I think, more through his Instagram postings. And I later learned through listening, I believe it was either Remote No Pressure, Honey Hole, the Honey Hole Angling podcast, of his actual literary works. And I've always tried to go and read them. I just unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say that I've not.
Don't be embarrassed.
Been able to do so. But yeah, I've been a big fan of Steve and what he represents. And, but no, your postings on Instagram, things like that, very inspirational. I know you're really big into conservation as we both are. And so that was kind of how I've come to know you before actually knowing that you were an author.
Well, I was on Remote No Pressure quite some time ago. It was a lot of fun. And I'm told, the most frequent guest of Honey Hole that they've ever had. So great guys. We always have fun. I think I've been there 4 times. So, but we always have fun.
Nice.
And we're going to have fun tonight too. So
yeah, they seem like they're pretty fun guys.
They are great guys.
So Jose talked a little bit about your love of conservation. So is that something that you've always, been into, something from a young age, or is that something that you've gotten into over the years?
It's been all my life. And I'll tell you, when and if you ever read any of my books, I'm joking with you here. And it's fine of you. But if you ever read any of my books, especially if you read, say, for instance, the first one, Casting Seaward, and that book, by the way, that book has been adopted. It's in a movie that everyone should see the movie without regard of my book. It's called Mending the Line, Josh Caldwell movie.
Great
It's
movie.
Starring Brian Cox, and it's you have seen it?
Yes, sir.
So I'm very honored that my book and my words are in that movie. But if you've read that book alone, you're going to see that I'm very open about most of my own life. And the reason being is not because I'm important at all, because I'm not. It's because I have lived a lot and been through a lot. And I found that there's a lot of us out there that have been going through similar things. So I write about a lot of challenge and hardship overcome, and about the absolute power and joy you get by struggling well. So if that makes sense. And I'm very open about, so I'm not saying this casually. You haven't shared with your listeners yet, but we were going to have an earlier date, and I just lost my mother, who just passed away. And that's always a tragic thing. This one was doubly tragic because I had a less than stellar relationship in that I was abused as a kid by my mother. And I don't say that to be mean. I always have wished the greatest things for her. And I tell you that because as a child, the one way I could get away from the violence of the house was to go out in the woods. Nature has always been my healer, even as a kid. I remember I wrote a piece once, and actually I inserted part of it into the first book, Casting Forward, about my interaction with a green lizard. That we kept each other company, and me and birds, and me and fish. So, yes, nature has always been my go-to place. My if you say church, my go-to place. It's where I learned my best lessons. And that's been since I was a kid. And as I got older, and I'm about to turn 63, so I've been around a while. I told you before we started the show that in the Marines, I didn't expect to live to be 30. So I've really beat the odds there.
Yeah.
I remember someone saying, well, that was really brave. I said, no, I gave my ass up for dead a long time ago. It wasn't brave. My point being is throughout life, nature has been the saving grace. And now I've noticed how much damage we've done to the earth. And it is us. There's no doubt in my mind. We're the common denominator. And as someone who loves free-running rivers and loves the ocean and loves mountains and loves desert, I want to see it. I want to see it last and thrive, and it's dying. And any angler that pays attention has got to admit, in these books I have traveled, you mentioned I'm a world traveler, so I've traveled 4 continents.
Wow.
Spent over 2 years of my life living in Africa. I've traveled all over the continent of Africa and Europe. Spent time in the Peruvian Andes and rainforest. And what I've learned everywhere I go is people say, you should have been here 30 years ago. You should have been here 20 years ago. I stood in the Peruvian Andes with a guide who told me when I was a boy, all these mountains were covered in glaciers and there's not a single glacier left. And those mountains were completely devoid of any snow. And this is in the Andes. I was just up in Alaska, and it's very easy to see the glaciers receding, and the mining companies are rejoicing because once the ice disappears, they can put a claim in for a copper mine immediately, or a gold mine or a silver mine. So the faster those glaciers melt, the happier they are. But that's short-term profit, y'all.
Yeah.
And what it's going to do, if you love fishing, if you like hunting, if you don't even have a consumptive love of nature and you just go hiking, you better hang on because it's going away. And people like you and I believe, if I sound like I'm on a soapbox, it's because I really passionately want to save nature from us.
Exactly.
And I knew even as a kid running into the woods to get away from human violence that it's not that nature is pretty. It's not that it's kind. I mean, it's not a Disney movie. In real life, the Lion King eats his subjects.
Yeah.
In real life, Thumper is basically food for either a hawk or a coyote. And Bambi's mom is going to get eaten.
Yeah.
So that's real life. But nature is honest. I don't think humans always are. Nature's straightforward. And
exactly.
After seeing so much human cruelty that I've seen as a Marine and elsewhere, I appreciate the honesty. And I think there's a lot of healing to be done. Inner city kids. I've worked a lot with inner city kids where we take them out into nature, and it's amazing to see them see their first lizard of their life, or notice that there's birds that aren't pigeons.
Right.
it's pretty cool to see their life open up, and suddenly it's not so bad anymore. So I guess I'm going on quite a bit, but I hope I answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I've been passionate about since I was a kid, and running into the woods and getting up into the trees so that I could be closer to the birds was something that kept me going. And even in the Marines, I was in the rainforest training with the Marines and the French Marines and African troops. But the truth is, I spent a lot of my time looking at the birds.
That's very similar to me. Speaking on childhoods.
Tell me about it. Seriously, this is a sharing thing.
So, very, very similar to you. I had a mom that she could have been a better mom. I'm not going to, disparage her because she did put a lot of effort. She just made a lot of wrong decisions. And we're all humans. We do. So me and her don't have the best relationship. I've talked to her maybe a handful of times in the past, probably 16 years. But as when I was younger, there was a lot of things going on in the household that I needed to get away from. And very similarly to you, I would go to the woods, I would find a creek. And at the time that a lot of this was going on, I lived in Austin, Texas. And so it wasn't obviously inner city, but it was a larger town at the time. And, I can go there was a little park over off Walnut Creek in North Austin that I would go to. And, I've told this story previously on an episode that how I got into fishing in general was there was this guy that just gave me a fishing pole, and he was staying under the bridge. I think it was Mopac Expressway maybe, or one of those highways. No, it was Metric. There was he was staying under Metric, and he gave me a fishing pole, and he started like opening up to me, telling me he was going through a divorce and all sorts of stuff. And looking back now, it's very strange because I was an 8-year-old kid. But back then I didn't know any better, and I took the fishing pole, and that's kind of how I got into fishing. But it was always my escape. I would go down to the creek, I would fish, I would watch the squirrels, I'd watch the birds. There was a goldfish in there that I tried forever to try to catch and never could. But it was therapeutic for me. It was just kind of my escape from reality and going to what I saw as another reality. So it was a very therapeutic and calming thing.
You just said something really important. We always talk about, and I know exactly what you mean, escape from reality. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, I think, that when we get out in nature, that is reality. The rest of the stuff that we deal with is the kind of either beautiful or horrible fantasy we create amongst ourselves. I don't know if any of you've seen the show, The Good Place.
I've not.
Have any of you ever seen the show The Good Place with Ted Danson? It's a show that's been over for a long time, but worth seeing. It's quite brilliant. So I'll give a spoiler alert if anybody doesn't want to know the premise. Put your fingers in your ears right now, because supposedly people have gone to the good place. There's 4 of them that end up in this perfect place where everything is nothing but what they would expect to be perfect. And what ends up happening is it becomes their hell. And the reason it becomes their hell is because the devils knew that if you put 4 humans together, they'll find a way to ruin it. They'll find a way to torture each other. And only after the 4 people there figure out what's really going on do they start reversing their own behavior to make the good place the good place. So nature's real straightforward.
Yeah.
And we bring the drama.
Oh, absolutely.
We bring the drama.
And that's one thing that I love about nature is you know what to expect, but at the same time, on the same hand, you never know what to expect. When it comes to fishing, obviously I'm probably going to go back to fishing a lot because that's extremely, what I'm extremely passionate about. But you can go to a body of water and you know what's in that body of water, and you'll catch something that you didn't expect to catch, or you'll be expecting to catch one specific species and you'll catch 3 other species that you didn't even know existed there. So, it's always expected yet unexpected at the same time. And that's just what's so beautiful about it.
Right. Yep. It is. It's dynamic. It's moving all the time. It's changing.
It is.
Like life.
Yep.
So for some reason, you already knew if you read anything of mine. I don't know if you read anything of mine actually, but if you read anything of mine, you see I'm very philosophical. But for some reason, where was I going with this? So I've lost it already. But we're talking about nature. Oh, yes, right. Humans seem to want sameness all the time, and then are complaining they're bored.
Yeah.
I don't want sameness. So if I go fishing, I'm going to be going with my friend Carrie Ray. We're going to go fishing on Monday. When we go fishing, if we have a great day of catching, that's wonderful. And if we catch nothing, we still have a great time. My day isn't made or broken about how many fish or how big the fish are that I catch. I've had just as many laughs when I thought I had a big fish, set the hook, and a 3-inch fish comes flying through the air into my hand. So
we've all had those. But it's still exciting to catch something. And there are some days.
Oh, I usually talk to them and I say, look at you. You're an overachiever. You just tried to eat a woolly bugger that's bigger than you are.
I've actually caught northern studfish about the size of a woolly bugger. I've caught gambrusia, mosquito fish, top minnows, and I've caught them on woolly buggers in the mouth. And when I pull them out, I believe that I probably foul hooked it, but then I look and the hook's in the mouth. It's like, how did I even do this? So it's pretty interesting on how some of them are.
It's a mighty fish. That's all.
Yep.
That fish looked at your fly and said, "I can do that." So I respect that little fish.
Same.
So the one that can swallow a duck whole is got a whole lot less to brag about, other than they survived that long.
Exactly.
So, all right, I'm open to any of your questions or anything. I'm hoping helping you.
Oh, you definitely are.
You asked one question about nature, and here we went. We took off. So
we've talked about travel and your world travel. So from what I've seen about your books, because I've only read the foreword and the first chapter of the first book, I'm not much of a reader, and I've really enjoyed what I've read so far. But to be honest, it's not what I expected. After reading all the information that you've sent me about yourself and your books, I was expecting more of kind of a travel blog style or like a guidebook type of thing, and you have a more artistic, philosophical form of writing that is extremely intriguing. And so is that how all of these books in this series, as well as your other works, are?
Yeah, if people want to get a taste of my writing without reading the whole thing, they could. I have the honor of writing the Seasonable Angler column for Fly Fisherman magazine. Mm-hmm. And that gives you a little taste, 1,500 to 1,700 words. What I'm doing in each book in different ways. So they're the casting series. So they're similar enough to connect, but different enough to make you have something new in each book. So I'm taking you on adventures with me. And the way I write them, or at least the way I try to write them, is so that you feel you're with me and you can feel the pull of the water. You are drifting down past the Grand Tetons with me. You're watching that bear in Alaska carefully as you walk along that trail. You're going through all those experiences, including the mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. And while you're on this adventure, whereas you say about things can be different. One day you show up and you can't stop catching fish, and another day you just can't get a bite. I write what really happens. Mm-hmm. I don't glorify things. I don't say, cut. Let's go to some place where I can get a lot of fish and look like a hero.
Yeah.
If I snag a tree, you hear that too. But beside the adventure, the truth is I'm taking you on the trip because I want you to learn something without knowing that's what you're there doing. So you're going to read about the history of the place. You're going to read about the nature of the place, the wildlife, the trees, the geology. It's going to be in there in very subtle ways. So by the time you've left Alaska with me, or Africa, or wherever we happen to be, you have come away with a feeling. Oh, and by the way, I add in the music, the food, the culture, the people, my friends.
Really?
It's a whole experience. Because what I want you to do is actually leave caring about the place. I put things in. I can't remember. I think it might have been Monty Burke when he did a review of one of my books. He did a beautiful job, but he mentioned that I sometimes repeat things, and I do on purpose. There's certain things I want to get into people's heads. And so one of them is I'll say everything's connected to everything. I want anglers to understand that if the sand flea or sand crab, or depending on what part of the country you're in, or mole crab, if they go extinct, all these fish you love that survive off of them are gone too. And then everything that survives off those fish are gone too. And it rolls from there. And there's a lot of little things I say like that where I'll say it again and again. But not all the time, but here and there, I'm doing it on purpose. So when you take the trip with me, I'm hoping what's going to happen, and this is where I'm getting to, I often write, we save what we love and we love what we know. If you don't know about what's going on in Bristol Bay, Alaska, and you don't know how gorgeous the place is, and you don't know why it's so important, then why would you care to save it?
Exactly.
If you don't know what's going on in the Big Hole River of Montana, and you think, oh, the Big Hole, have either of you fished the Big Hole?
No, sir. I've never been to Montana, unfortunately.
Okay, so that's in my fourth book. It's coming out September 1. And I'm not going to give a spoiler on that, but I will tell you that all across America, legendary rivers, you go there now, and the guides who have been there for 20, 30 years are all saying the same thing. Our populations are collapsing. Our fish populations are collapsing.
Really?
The water's too warm. The water's too shallow. Now it's too deep. Well, people say, well, how can it be that people are talking about global warming and then things are getting more rain? Well, that's because climate change happens differently all different places. So rain doesn't land over here where it used to, but it lands twice as hard over here where it didn't. So, for example, here in my Texas Hill Country, for the first time in my lifetime, and I was told in the first time a lot of people could remember, some of our rivers went completely dry to the bone. And all those fish died. Not just the fish. Every bit of aquatic life died. So, yeah, I'm trying to get people to realize what's going on. But it's also not a downer. I'm writing all the good stuff that's going on. People like you and I, Trout Unlimited and other organizations, plus organizations like I'm involved with Project Healing Waters, with veterans. There's a lot of ways people like us can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Whether it's helping people with PTSD or helping people with cancer or helping people with there's a lot of ways we help each other. And one of the things I love about fly fishing is we have a great tribe. I met the best people of my life fly fishing, and just in outdoor stuff. Do you have that as your experience too?
I do, absolutely. And I've never heard it described as a tribe before. And I feel like that's way more fitting than the word community that I always use. Everybody says the fly fishing community, but you said a tribe, and that really, that strikes. That I feel like that's a way more accurate term.
Well, again, I'm just kidding with you here. If you ever do read my stuff, you'll find out I use that word a lot on purpose because I want us to start thinking about ourselves as our tribe. Because, and we also hold each other accountable,
Absolutely.
We start saying, hey, we don't throw that beer can in that river.
Yeah.
You don't need to keep that fish out of the water like that.
Exactly.
If we want fish to be here in the future, we got to take care of it. So, and as long as it's okay for me to talk about conservation. In my writing, I purposely changed the words we use, hoping people will follow along with me. So I'm not writing bait fish. I'm writing forage fish. From nature's perspective, it's not there for our bait.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if we did that to people and called, well, he's a bait person. We just throw him away. So I don't say natural resource because that's something to be used.
Yeah.
And, sucked up and thrown away. And there's 8 billion of us on Earth. We can't keep throwing it away.
Exactly. I feel like we need to have a mutually symbiotic relationship with nature.
Sure. And that's why there's another theme. I don't glorify any group. I spell it out as things happened as best I can through good research. But Native Americans or indigenous people around the world tend to have a relationship, with any other flaws that any group has. They have a relationship that's reciprocal with nature.
Mm-hmm.
We take this because it's offered to us, and we give this back.
Mm-hmm.
You take this, you plant that. And if we do that, then generations are going to have better rivers than we have.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm not a downer. I'm saying it's all in our power. We can fix this.
Yeah,
I definitely believe we can.
One person at a time, one podcast at a time.
Yeah. And that's exactly what our goal is to be able to get the word of conservation out by having guests as yourself on that have knowledge, other forms of creators, whether it be artistically or via writing. We just want to get people on here that can get the information out probably better than me or Jose could do ourselves. But from what all this is saying about your books, is it safe to say that you use fly fishing stories to convey ecological issues and, approach those issues and give lessons, whether it's through fishing or not? Because it seems like you have a lot of information in these books that's not directly related to fishing.
I would almost agree with you. I would say that a lot of us are missing how much is directly related to fishing. I think so many anglers have gotten so caught up in, I can catch the biggest trout on the tiniest fly. And I can do it while looking backwards, and I can do it in a wind, and I can set a 90-foot cast, and that's all nice, lovely, and I can't do any of that myself, by the way. And I'm not. If I punch a 90-foot cast into the wind, that was pure luck. So, but what I can do is go fishing and get more out of it than the person who is so focused on the distance of their cast, how many different knots they know, and how many fish they can catch to beat their buddy. And I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just saying all this is about fly fishing.
I see.
So, yes, I am more philosophical, and you're kind of right. I'm taking people on fly fishing and other adventures. I used to write hunting stories before.
I see.
And sometimes I'm writing stories where I'll use the word hiking because everybody knows that I don't tell people I hike anymore. I walk in nature because hikers tend to be in a hurry to get somewhere. Did you enjoy your time in, Grand Teton? Oh yeah, we put 20 miles in a single day. I said, well, yeah, but what did you see?
Right.
Well, we pretty much had our head down because we had to get 20 miles.
So what's the point of that?
So that's where I'm coming from. I'm trying to get people to slow down and pick up their head once in a while and realize, damn, This is beautiful. And, and I'm glad I'm out here with my buddy. And don't miss the point. The point is not how many fish you catch. That's nice. That's extra.
Don't miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah. When I went out to Utah to do for my second book, I went to Utah to do the Grand Slam. I don't like those sort of things that they sound competitive, but it's the slam of native cutthroats. My job in 3 days was to catch one fish of each species within its native. I will never, ever forget any one of those fish. So I caught one fish and moved on to the next watershed to find the next species. What I'm saying that for is I've had days where I'm catching 20, 30 fish, but I don't remember any of them.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember we caught 20, 30 fish that day. I've had days where I snip off my fly and decide I'm just going to go wading in the stream because I've caught too many fish. And I've had days where I can't catch a fish.
As we all have.
I'm either not getting a bite or I blew it on every single one.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that too. So someone recently asked me if I'd be on a show because they said, you're an expert. I said, no, I'm not. You need to get yourself a real expert. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. So yeah, I think you're pretty close on what I'm doing, but I wanted to expand on that. It's all these other things anglers can be getting out of it.
I see.
Hunters, hikers, is so much more out there than just smacking the water.
I agree with that.
And don't get me wrong. I love getting out on the water off Montauk with my buddy David Blinken and going after albies and watching them scream off it. I love that. I have loved fishing for catching big fish that are racing off with my backing. That's great, but I don't live for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I don't get that, I still had a great day out on the ocean. Jose, did you have something? You've been really quiet, buddy.
No, I just I appreciate hearing you speak. You have a very like poetic way of speaking. You can tell I could tell just by listening, you're very thoughtful in what you say. So I can only imagine it translates to the way you write as well. And I do have a question about that, but before I get there, I wanted to ask you something else, based on what you were just saying now. So I feel like fishermen and hunters and probably outdoorsmen in general, they kind of have like there's like a progression. Like for me, for example, when I was younger and more eager and I was all gung ho about fishing and things, I was really focused on like catching my limit or, just seeing how many fish I can catch that day. But later on, like now I feel like I've changed. My mentality has changed a bit and it's no longer about that. It's more just getting out and enjoying nature and just being in it and enjoying the moment. Because nowadays, with school and life and whatever, I don't get a lot of those moments. So I try to cherish it more whenever I get when I get those times. So for you, have you always kind of viewed nature in like how you were just speaking, like you just want to enjoy those moments and things, or was it a progression, like it was for like me and other people?
I wrote in one of my books, I'm a conservationist, not a saint. And I wrote that because I was making fun of myself because just like anybody else, I love catching fish. When I'm hunting, I hunted Africa and I still would have had a great time if I didn't get my kudu, but if you look behind me, I got my kudu.
Nice.
You can see it on the wall there.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not a saint. I still love catching the fish, and it's always easier to experience a day when you're interacting rather than just sitting on the water, waiting for something to happen. And you also will read that I know it's effective and I'll be doing it on Monday, but I'm just not a huge fan of staring at a bobber. I'm sorry, a strike indicator.
Same.
If I can ever get away with dry flies or streamers, I'm all about that, or wet flies. I want to be doing something, and watching an indicator just drift along is just not my gig. But I will be doing it probably Monday on the Guadalupe. And so, yeah, I don't know that it's progression for me. As a kid, sure, I wanted to fish with my dad and say, "Hey, Dad, look at the big fish I caught," because that's what the big guys did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But after a while, I started teaching my dad some things, and where my mother was, and I'm not being disrespectful. I feel very bad about this. We all have different things we carry that make us the way we are. But she was very abusive. My father was very kind, and he's the one who introduced me to nature. So at first I wanted to be one of the big guys. I wanted to catch big fish for my dad. But later on I started teaching my dad that didn't really matter so much. Just like I started teaching him, you don't need to kill a snake because it's a snake. It's part of nature, Dad. Just let it go. Let it go. He was raised with, hey, it's a snake, kill it. And by the time I was done, he had learned respect for snakes. So I don't know. It was a short progression for me. I think, because what you were talking about, Russell, me running out into the woods to get away from violence, nature's always been my buddy. You tend not to smack your buddy around, hopefully.
Right. You would hope not.
Yeah. So, but I think what you describe, Jose, is quite the norm. I'm the weird one. So, that's normal. And also I had my own youth, as a young Marine. I remember looking back and thinking, now I think back, oh, that's embarrassing. I made some really stupid mistakes.
Yeah, it seems like your relationship with nature has been a bit different than probably most, at least from just from the way that you speak and things. It seems like you've always seemed to be a bit more in tune, a bit more in touch with things. And so that kind of goes into my second question for you. I noticed that, again, like the way you speak is very poetic. You're very thoughtful. You seem to have a very philosophical perspective on things. And so, and when, in terms of your writing, how did that come about, and how did you decide, or at what point did you decide that, okay, like I need to share this love of mine, this passion with others, and writing is the way I'm going to do it?
It's a great question. Just like my interaction with nature, writing has been I don't want to say an escape, but an outlet for me, even since I was a kid. I remember making my own, like, comic book stories when I was a kid, where I do the drawings and and later on I got into journaling. As a matter of fact, I have typewriter type journals from my time in the Marines, including one I'm thinking of right now, where I've been told I'm on a post, and I was told by the spooks, the CIA, intelligence people, they said, well, you're probably going to get hit tonight, and there's not a damn thing we can do for you because we need you there. And that was Christmas Eve. And I typed out my thoughts that night when I was waiting for the vehicle-borne IED to smack into the building. And so I've always been writing in one capacity. And then later on, I wrote in my other life, working in law enforcement and homeland security and counterterrorism. I wrote for journals and magazines. But that was that wasn't creative writing, other than the fact that I was always trying to say creatively that we should do things differently. And I've written poetry, and I've written and published poetry, and I've written and published fiction as well, short fiction. But the truth is, I can't not write. It's just what changed is when my father died 7 years ago. And if you read my stuff, or if you've seen the movie Mending the Line, you'll hear some of my words. And you'll know that I have struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder most of my adult life, to a point in my 40s where I didn't know if I could go on living. I had to go through hypnotherapy to get the nightmares to somewhat subside. And I'll share with you, I'm now about to turn 63. Last night and the night before are the first 2 nights I haven't had night terrors since my mother's death.
Oh, wow.
So it doesn't just go away. It doesn't just go away. It ebbs and flows now for me. I'll go a long time and I'll be okay, and then I won't be. You hear me saying that calmly. I'm not upset about it. It's something you live with, like a freckle you don't like on your face. So, or a face you don't like on your face. So, but writing is the way. It's the only thing I have to give. And I think I started telling you before we got on here, when I write, it flows as if someone's telling me what to do. Mm-hmm. I have a general idea what happened that day, but that doesn't mean I know the way that story is going to be portrayed. Mm-hmm. I just relive it. And people have said to me, how do you get the detail? You were in Alaska a month ago and the truth is, I've been given a blessing that I can put my mind there and I can float down, the Wrong Turn River in Alaska all over again and experience it all while I'm writing. And I'll go back almost trance-like and read my writing and say, wow, I didn't know I wrote that. So there's a lot of cleanup that has to be done. There's a lot of cleanup. So you write sloppy, and I tell people, and they say, well, you have any advice? Well, it's different for everyone. But for me, don't edit yourself. Let it flow. Then go back and clean up. So to me, if people tell me we don't want to read your writing anymore, I'm not sure what I do. I guess write for myself again, journals. But I think a writer needs readers. And it's not about selling books, because it's not like the movies. You don't make big money doing this.
Yeah.
If you're not making a lot of money doing this. It doesn't matter if I have 4 books. It doesn't matter. You're not making big book money. You're doing it because you're passionate about it. A writer needs readers. And so it's why any of you that are on, Facebook or Instagram with me, I'm always thanking my readers.
Mm-hmm.
I have met authors who are annoyed by having to meet people that want to meet them at book signings and stuff. And I never understand that, because I'm thrilled that people are taking the time to read my words. That's why I did it. I did it for you.
Yeah. I think that's amazing.
Otherwise, I should keep it to myself.
Right. I think it's amazing that, obviously you're passionate about what you write about. So I guess I could see how maybe if people were writing for the wrong reasons, they might have that mentality of, I don't want to meet my readers. But you're passionate about what you write about. You're passionate about sharing your experiences, and you're passionate about getting the lesson across about conservation. So I just think that's amazing that to couple with that you love meeting the people that are the consumers of your art. So that's awesome.
And I will say, while I haven't yet read your books, I say yet because it's going to happen, but I did watch Men in the Line, and some of the quotes that they pulled from your book for that movie, man, the movie itself, I mean, it was beautiful. The story, the cinematography, everything about it was wonderful. But the quotes and how they incorporated it into the scenes in which they were, it just like set a different tone. Like, it was, I don't even know how to really explain it, other than it was incredibly moving and powerful. Have you ever been approached, whether it be like a direct message or an email or in person, by people, and is there like a quote that they say, like, hey, you wrote this, and it just like, is there something that really like can come to your mind immediately that people have told you, like, how it's impacted them? Or
I'm so grateful to be able to tell you, and this is why I say I love meeting people that read my work, because it's happened a lot. It happens all the time. It happens with veterans. It happens with women who are abused. It happens to just, Joe and Jane that say, wow, that really touched me. That really, I have people that write to me now that follow me that, and actually people end up in my books because I meet them like this. And next thing you know, I fly out and we go fishing together. So I'm trying to break those rules. The internet can do 2 things. It can tear us apart, which is doing really, really well, though we're doing it to ourselves. We're using the internet it's just like a firearm or a stick. You can use it for good, or you can use it for something else. So, I carried at least one weapon for 35 years of my life. Sometimes I had 2 or 3 on me at a time because of the job I was doing. There was times I went to work with a pistol on my leg, a pistol behind my back, and an Uzi hanging off my coat. So that was my life. But nobody was in danger from me, unless they were coming to endanger someone that I was protecting. So getting back to your thing, I hear from people in person through messages on my website, which is just SteveRamirezAuthor.com. And you can message me that way. And I'm not as good as I should be about keeping up on those messages, but I do try. And I've been at book signings, and I'll tell you one without saying the gentleman's name. I've kept in touch with him. I was at a book signing, and a man and wife came up, big, strong man, came up, and he already had 3 of my books. He was buying, he had all 3 books. He brought them with him, so I had signed them, which to me is always an honor, because I think, who wants my signature? So I wrote a book, big deal. So But I'm signing them, and I see this gentleman's getting emotional. And his wife kind of touches my hand, and she says, my husband's not going to tell you this, but we owe your first book, Casting Forward, a lot. And she talked about trauma he had been through and how she had kind of lost him for 2 years. He never laughed. He never cried. He never smiled. He just plowed through life. And somehow she got him that book. I don't know how she caught wind of it. She wasn't an angler. He was. She said he had quit fishing for 2 years. I understand that kind of trauma. When my father died, I set my guitar down and I didn't play for 3 years. So he's the one that taught me. I looked up and this big man was crying. And he had been through some serious trauma, but the words in Casting Forward and the experience of sharing how you overcome that and the experience of how nature and fly fishing and friendship can help do that had really helped him. And that's why I'm writing it. You know, anybody can write about, I'm not dismissing this, but anyone can write a story about fishing or hunting or mountain climbing or scuba diving, all of which I've done. But why does it matter? Am I answering your question okay?
Oh, yeah. No.
So, yeah, it has happened. And I'm super grateful every time it happens because it tells me, all right, I should still write. Because I don't think you should write if you have nothing worth saying. When I realized, you know, I was a college professor for a while and I loved teaching, but after a while I thought, okay, I think I've done what I can do here. I remember being charged in command of we'll call it a Homeland Security unit. And after 2 years with them, I realized they were so good they didn't need me anymore. So I left. Put my second in command in charge. So if I didn't think my writing did any good, I'd stop. Yeah. I just write for myself again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
Well, it seems like your writing is doing a lot of good.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope so.
I guess to kind of piggyback off of that, of all your literary works, of all that you've written, is there a passage or a line or a quote or anything that you feel really like like you just love, you know, that like, I guess something that you wish all of your readers could read if they have not yet already?
That's a great question. It's a tough one too. I actually have a whole collection of, and this is not arrogant or anything. I went through all my books and pulled the quotes that I thought were most meaningful, and I've got them. No one else has seen them, but I've got a whole collection of the most meaningful ones. But if I had to answer it quickly, you saw Bending the Line, and I would say the quotes from Joshua Creek that are in, which is one of the chapters you haven't yet. It's the next one for you to read, Russell. It's very short. The quotes in there are the ones that were used in Mending the Line, at least in part. They pulled some from another chapter too. They get to the core of it. I think and the reason I speak poetically is nice of you to say that, Jose, but I tell people my brain is wired very strangely. I see everything in poetry and metaphor, which is something for a guy that spent 35 years of his life armed and training people how to get through a door and get at a bad guy.
Right.
You know, or how to rappel off a roof and into a window. And, but even that, to me, I saw a poetic part to what we were doing.
So you were trained to be technical, but yet your mind still found a way to be, you know, poetic behind all of the technical training.
I wouldn't say I was trained to be technical, because in the Marine Corps and the things that I did when you're doing, you know, high speed training, they want you to think on your feet. They want you to be. And my master's degree is actually in adult education and training, and my doctoral work is also in adult education and training. So I was very much trained, but also trained to think on my feet and to be. So they're not mutually exclusive, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I see.
It's like I can make a really beautiful cast perhaps, but it doesn't mean I didn't see why it's important that I'm standing in that river.
I see.
So for me, when I was dealing with violence and human violence in life, that still turned the metaphor for me when I finally came away from it and came down from it. When I was done having to move from going through the pockets of a corpse to find out who the dead guy was, to trying to be a normal human being when I got away from that. I still was able to learn something from that experience. Still in that experience, there was a chance for compassion. There was a chance. We are the people of our choosing, not our upbringing.
Absolutely.
And I'll flip to that. And I keep saying I'm a conservationist, not a saint. Well, we all screw up. And one thing that worries me now is we don't seem to have any, whether it be among anglers or it be among just humans, we don't seem to have any room for redemption. We don't give each other a second chance. We don't give each other a chance to explain. And maybe as an angler, it's better. So I'll tell a quick story. It's in my second book. I was with, do you know who Kirk Dieter is?
I do not.
He's been with so many different institutions, but he is the editor of Trout Magazine for Trout Unlimited, a dear friend, and highly, highly respected author of 2 books that I'm aware of, probably more than that, but two that I have. And I was with Kirk Dieter, and we were out chasing Colorado river cutthroats for the second book I was working on. And this young man with his girlfriend came down and basically high-holed us. He parked next to our vehicle, came down and said hi, and he went up there and just plopped right where we were going.
Wow.
And I'm telling this story because Kirk showed the classy way of dealing with things. He didn't get mad at the young man. He said, he probably just doesn't know any better. Mm-hmm. So by the time Kurt was done interacting with him on his way back, and he pretty much had ruined the place we were going to fish. He had told the guy, we were catching fish, and the kid didn't catch anything. He was fresh out of the Air Force. And so what Kurt did instead was educate him kindly about the way to approach the river. And if there's another angler here, here's how you do this. And by the way, you'll get more chances on these fish if you use these flies. Here, I'll give you a couple. That's what he did.
I see.
He didn't say, "Hey, dumbass." He said he talked to the young man, gave him some flies, gave him some tips on how he could fish that better, and kind of told him it might be a better way to approach this if you see someone fishing, that you go ahead and ask them, where is it okay for me to fish through?
Yeah.
So look, it's like the difference between shooting a bear and killing it at the dump, or chasing it away and stinging it with pepper spray, and then it learns don't go to the dump. And I apologize if I go on too much. I think we've been talking a long time on this, but
you're not going on too long at all. That's kind of what we're known for. We love to, go off on tangents. Yeah. We'll have a specific thing we want to talk about, and then we go off on a tangent. Next thing you know, it's 30 minutes later, and we said it's going to be a short episode, and then it's going to be an hour and a half. So that's par for the course for us.
But it's also what happens when you're having a good conversation. Like I've learned a lot just listening to you speak. Actually changing the way I think and say and speak about the things that we do. It's very, very interesting. Been a great conversation.
Well, thank you, Jose.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You're finding out how weird I am. I talk to birds and touch trees, and I thank. By the way, if you saw Brian Cox thank the fish in mending the line, mm-hmm. That's from me.
Really?
I want to put a shout. That is from me. There's other things he says and does that are from me as well. And I have to put a shout out to Stephen Camilio, who wrote that movie, who wrote it and has become a friend. And I also want to say, who's become a great friend of mine, Josh Caldwell, the director. He is in my 4th book, by the way, Fishing with Me up in the Catskills. And Josh and Stephen, if Jose, you thought that movie did a great job, they did it. They really did a fantastic job of telling a story in a way that was meaningful and not just Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So truth be told, before I had ever seen the previews, like when I first heard that it was coming into production, I mean, the only fly fishing movie that I can think of aside from that is, of course, River Runs Through It, right? Like everybody knows that. And I was like, how, I wonder how they're going to make a fly fishing movie. Like it's just, I didn't think, what else you can do, but man, I saw the previews. I was like, okay, this is going to be really interesting. And then I saw the movie and it was just like, man, it was more than what I was expecting. It was heavy, but relatable, but beautiful. The storytelling, everything about it was just so wonderfully done. And I know I have a lot of friends who, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, we're all carrying stuff, right? It's a human condition, if you will. We all have our things. And
Right.
I have a friend who's recently been going through some things, and so I was like, man, and she's not really a fly fisher person. She's seen us do it. She's always like, she's been intrigued, and I do want to take her one day. But I said, regardless of that fact, I think, and she's also she loves writing herself, poetry, and she's working on the series of books as well. So I was like, aside from the fly fishing thing, or even that, I think you would really, really like this movie. And so we talked a little bit about it. She goes, oh yeah, like I'm going to have to watch it. I don't know if she has or not. I need to ask her, but yeah, I can, and even me, my own personal things, yeah, that movie was incredibly moving. Very, very powerful.
It was for sure.
I'm humbly pleased to be a small part of it, but I wanted to definitely point out two people who are both dedicated anglers. And by the way, you mentioned River Run Through It. They got the same trout wrangler for River Run Through It in this movie.
Really?
It's the same guy. They hired that guy to come make sure they had trout and how to film them. And it's kind of funny because I learned this from Josh Caldwell, the director, that the trout got better treatment than the actors did. There was like all these people around to make sure the trout was okay. And then, if you could pan back from that, you would see there's all these people ready to make sure the trout is okay. And that the people with nets and people with, so yeah, the trout got a lot of tender loving care there, and then were released back into the river.
Yeah, I can't remember which podcast it was. Might have been Honey Hole. They had, I think, the director from the movie on or something, and they talked about,
it was Honey Hole. They had Josh on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They talked in detail about the trout and how they took care of it. I was like, wow, like just the amount of effort that went into that, incredible.
Yeah. Josh is a great guy and a very intense and dedicated angler. Far more than me.
Really?
He is serious.
That's awesome.
He's going to get that fish. And I'm much more like, I didn't get the fish. I think I'm about ready for a sandwich and a beer. Josh is focused. He is on it. And he's always improving.
That's awesome.
He's always working to improve his game.
That's cool.
I'll also mention quickly, in my fourth book, I actually go and fish not only with Josh, but I actually go to the same waters in the movie, and I fish that in my fourth book, the same places that are in the movie.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Speaking of the movie, what was it like when you were first approached about it? Like, what were your initial thoughts and reactions, and how did that all just kind of come about?
They had written into the movie that there was going to be a piece of fly fishing literature, but they didn't know what it would be. A friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who is a guide in Arizona, her name is Cinda Howard. If anyone's going to fish down there, they should go see Cinda. And she knew Josh. She took Josh's parents fly fishing and told them about me and my book. This is the way the world works. His mother bought him Casting Forward as a gift. He read it and took it to Stephen Camilio and said, this is our book. They contacted my publisher and publicist. They contacted, and then through them got me. And my first response is, I need to see the script. I need to know what this is about, because I didn't want to get anything attached to something that was going to be less than something I wanted to be involved in, that was going to glorify killing, or that was going to, put sex in there just to have sex, or all this sort of stuff. And you saw that movie. It's very tastefully done.
Yes.
It's very well done. And so after I got a feel for who they were and saw what great people were putting this movie together, right to the producers, they were doing this as a labor of love. I was more than happy to be involved. So, but I did do my own due diligence and screening to see what this was about. And what I found out was it was a great group of people putting together an excellent film. So I'm very honored and pleased to have a small part in it. So
I assume you've watched the movie, and when you did, or if you did, what was that like?
Actually, the producers were kind enough to fly my wife and I up to the Woodstock Film Festival, so we saw the premiere.
Oh, that's so cool.
I had seen the cuts prior to that. When it was being put together. I got to see the cuts ahead of time and the changes, but I hadn't seen the whole complete movie until the premiere. And they flew us up for that, and tears were shed. And it was a wonderful experience. And I'm very grateful to the producers, especially Mark Kimura, for how they've seen the value of what part my words have played in it.
That's awesome.
And also they know that we're on the same path. We're trying to put something out there that's going to help people and along the line help nature, help rivers, help streams. If you care about this stuff, it's not just about. I hear people say, and I've written this sort of thing before, "Oh, I love being on a river. I love nature." But if they're the same people throwing beer cans and just killing fish for the sake of killing them, and the people that never pick their head up and notice anything and see deer as nothing but meat, then they don't love it.
Exactly.
That's like saying you love a person, but what you mean is I love to use that person.
Yep.
I love the way I can manipulate that person. I love the way I can get them to work for me. That's not love. So,
I agree with that.
Yeah. And I do write about stuff like that. Call it the way you see it. If what you're really doing is using it, then say, I'm using you. That's what you are. You're something I'm going to use. But I'm hoping more of us anglers, hunters, hikers, skiers fall in love with the mountain for real and the stream, because then we'll save it.
And that's one thing that stood out to me on that episode of Honey Hole where they had Josh Caldwell on, was when he was talking about the care that they took for the fish and how they were able to get these shots without harming the fish and whatnot. Like, that was just another reason for me to go see the movie. And I actually went and watched it in Little Rock, about an hour from where I live. And I took my girlfriend, who is not a fisherman of any sorts, conventional or fly. She just could really care less. And she went with me and saw it, and she even really liked the movie. Wife. Yeah, she really enjoyed it. I was almost taken aback by it.
She should read my book.
And she's more of a reader than I am, so she actually might finish it before I do if I let her.
Yeah, she should read my book, and she can tell you what it said.
That's a good idea. I didn't think about that. Hey, read this and tell me about it.
Clip notes.
She can do the crib notes for you and for Jose, because so
that is not a bad idea.
No, Russell, you really should read it.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I am a slow reader, and I'm the type of person that it's hard for me to comprehend what I read. So I have to reread everything 3 or 4 times before I get it and can move on to the next thing. So it's slowly but surely happening.
Something you need to practice. And you know why it is? It's because everybody's looking at a screen now.
Exactly.
There's no attention.
I think it's a little bit of ADHD caused by screen time.
Yep. There's no doubt in my mind about it, and that's why any good author, this is just opinion, I think you have to be a reader. I'm reading constantly. I read constantly. I'm often reading 2 or 3 books at a time while I'm writing a book.
Wow.
So, but by reading, I'm learning.
So to that end, are there any authors or books that inspire you or have inspired you?
Oh, many, many, many. As a matter of fact, if you, I don't keep pointing out my own books, but if you look at the back of most of my books, I put a reading list on there of the authors that I do, so people can see what books are really impacting me. So these days, when I was younger, I read a lot of fiction, and like so many outdoors related males or females, I loved Hemingway. Now, as I've gotten older, I read mostly nonfiction. So books like Sapiens is one that really has a major impact on my life. I just got done reading. It's not an easy read. Let's see if I have it right here. By the way, a lot of stuff that I'm reading will end up in my stories because I share what I read with people, and it changes from book to book. So I just finally read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is not an easy read at all. Russell, I would say you should not take this one on first. So, this is not an easy read. Before that, I read, I'm reaching around at a few books that I have here on my desk, my writing desk, if I can get them. Before that, I read Home Place by my friend J. Drew Lanham, one of my favorite books. None of these have anything to do with fly fishing. Cormac McCarthy, The Road. Barry Lopez, Embrace Fearlessly, The Burning World. These are all books that I've been reading recently. I read another one. It wasn't an easy read, but important, was Braiding Sweetgrass. I read that. Looking at the difference between Native American and Euro-American points of view about nature. You know, we plant everything in a row, monoculture. Then we wonder why there's so many weeds and why everything dies as soon as the bugs show up. Native Americans learned you plant these three things together. One supports the other. One puts nitrogen in the soil. The other one gives shade to the other. They all grow together.
Don't they call that like the Three Sisters or something like that?
Three Sisters. Yeah. Yes, I'm impressed. Three Sisters. That's right. And all that exists in angling too. If you look at a river, it's all connected. One thing falls, the rest of it's gone. And then everybody's saying, well, why are all the fish dying? So the Big Hole River is losing massive amount of fish, and it is a legendary trout river. The Big Hole, the Ruby, those rivers are losing a lot of fish. And they're still trying to figure out why.
I was just about to ask, and what's the cause of that?
I guarantee you it's us. There's a study going on now to figure it out while the fish are dying.
Wow.
I will guarantee you it's us. It's us. It's humans. We're the common denominator with all these things.
That's majority of the time for any issue with typically wildlife and waterways. It always comes back to us in some form of pollution or something, some type of human interaction majority of the time.
Oh, yeah. I'm not trying to put us down or anything. I'm just saying that we are the one species that totally changes our environment without ever thinking of, what will this do to me if I eat all this stuff?
Yeah.
So, if you eat nothing but tacos and you get a heart attack at 40, you shouldn't be shocked.
Exactly.
But we're all guilty of that.
Oh,
stuff,
we are for sure. So we've alluded a little bit about your books. So the first book, Casting Forward, is through the Texas Hill Country. And feel free to interrupt me if I'm incorrect about any of these. The second book, Casting Onward, kind of expands from that, geographically exporting native game fish. The third book, Casting Seaward, extends to the scope of saltwater game fish. What can we expect out of Casting Homeward?
In Casting Homeward, I have traveled purposely from Alaska in the wildest part of America, least touched by humanity, though every place in the world has been touched by us. And I purposely end up first of all, I end up generally right outside New York City in the Catskill Mountains. When I'm doing that, I pretty much start and stop all my books here in the Texas Hill Country. So there's always a chapter called First Cast. There's always a chapter called Just One More Cast. Because if you're anything like me, I have a tough time stopping. just one more cast. Okay. Well, there might be one over behind that rock. I'll take that cast. So 30 minutes after I said I'm going to quit, I'm still fishing. So in between, and all my books are 21 chapters. It's on purpose. In between, what I'm doing is I'm taking you backwards in time, so to speak. I'm going the opposite direction from where Euro-Americans colonialized America, as we spread across. And while I'm doing that, we're moving from the most pristine waters to the least pristine waters. And I'm fishing with people in legendary waters, some of them. And some of them are legendary because everybody says, oh, wow, it's the big hole. It's the fire hole. It's the, whatever it happens to be. Everybody knows that. Or the Delaware, the Farmington. And some I call legendary because, well, this is the stream that the great Dave Whitlock loved. And so in this book, I get the honor of fishing with my dear friend, Emily Whitlock, his widow. And I get the honor, because of her, of fishing with one of Dave's rods, with Dave's flies, wearing Dave's vest that still has the flies he tied for her in the pockets with the notes of love to her.
Wow.
And if you don't know, Dave passed away right after Thanksgiving, one day after Thanksgiving, I believe it was, or one day before. And he had a big impact on me because here's a guy that wrote, you don't have to be fancy to fly fish. You can go after bass. And by the way, I've fished for all kinds of fish, salt, trout, char, salmon. I'm still a bass angler. I love fishing for bass. I'm still a Southern boy. And my friend originally from Texas, now living up in Arkansas, says that he says trout fishing is ballet and bass fishing is a street fight. So
I like that. Maybe more like a honky tonk.
Yes. So I'm taking people on a journey, and we're going to do all kinds of cool stuff. We're going to be out there in a float plane landing in lakes in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. We're going to be floating down the Delaware with Josh from the movie. We're going to be fishing with Emily in the favorite private stream that her and Dave love so much, and on the pond that he built. We're going to float down past the Grand Tetons with Boots Allen, great guide, down the Snake River. We're going to do all this great stuff together, but along the way, we're going to learn stuff. We're going to learn about what we've done. And by the way, if the fifth one comes out that I believe is going to happen, I'll be giving more information about what we can do. Not just about nature, but about ourselves. Because while I am sounding alarms, I'm also saying, but this is all fixable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We can do this. All we have to do is care.
Oh, yeah.
That's all we got to do as a tribe.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We just have to care.
And I think there's a lot of that, coming from both sides, because nature saves us from ourselves, and yet we can be the one to make the change to save nature. So I think that's a very important message to get across.
Well, Russell, you nailed it. And a couple areas in the books, I tell you, I do repeat things on purpose sometimes. And I write, nature has saved me, and I think this is my turn to try to return the favor. And I have nothing to offer but my words and the ideas, the thoughts, the poetry. And that's all I've got, and I joke around. I told you I'm going to turn 63 in about a week. I've got evolving asthma, heart disease, and a birth defect in my heart, apnea. I've lived a life for 35 years that's beat the hell out of me, broken all kinds of bones in combative situations. And I'm laughing about this. So I joke with my wife saying I probably have the life expectancy of a Pomeranian. And when you think about, one of the downsides of loving dogs is they only live about 14 years. So I'm writing as a mission,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm grateful to people at Lions Press that they see the value in what I'm doing and they've backed me, along with a lot of really great folks like Dave and Emily Whitlock. And I could get the long list. Bob White, who has become one of my dearest friends, who does the artwork for my books. And if you don't know Bob, you'll never meet a better man on earth. So yeah, I'm a lucky guy.
Sounds like you're surrounding yourself with people with similar passions.
Oh, I am, because I spent 35 years dealing with the assholes of the world, with terrorists and drug dealers and gun runners and murderers and rapists. That was my life, dealing with those people. So now I do not waste my time on anybody who's not nice. So, and I won't go fishing with them either. I don't care how fancy they are. Yeah, they can sell that 90-foot cast out there, but if they're not nice people, they're not fishing with me.
I like those standards.
Do you have any kind of questions for me as we're wrapping things up? And
I can't think of any.
Or did I talk so much there's nothing to say?
Again, I was quiet for a lot of the podcasts just because I enjoyed hearing you speak. I learned a lot about my own self and how I view things too. And, just thank you for your time, Steve. It was a pleasure having you on, and it was a great conversation. Enjoyed it.
It was. We really appreciate you coming on.
I hope you enjoyed it, because I sure did.
Oh, I definitely did. Maybe we can follow in Honey Hole's footsteps and have you on for a myriad of times.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we get closer to casting Homeward coming out, let's do it again.
That would be awesome.
That sounds great.
I would love that. Maybe we'll have to maybe we'll have to get together and go fishing, and then we can do
Oh,
one.
that would be awesome. I'll definitely have to make a trip down to Texas for that one.
Or I'll come to Arkansas.
Just let me know when. So for those of you listeners out there, as he mentioned earlier, if you want to go to his website, it is at steveramirezauthor.com. If you're interested in getting any of his books, they're available at most major retailers. You can get them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, IndieBound. But there you go. Is there any other places that people can find you, or any other information you want to give out on how to get a hold of you?
The website's the greatest way to touch base, but also obviously I'm with Lions Press, and you can get I tell you, if you're going to get the books, get them the most inexpensive way you can. Mm-hmm. So the one good thing about the website is it gives you links to all the different booksellers that are major booksellers, and you can kind of shop around. The Casting Forward, I'll let you know that it's being sold in paperback. It went through 3 hardcover editions. I'm really grateful that my publisher has decided to make it available in hardcover on a request basis. So in other words, if you went to a dealer and you ordered hardcover, they're going to print one. I share that because they're beautiful, and I'm biased. I'll tell you right now, I'm very lucky that I have a wonderful publisher and editor, and we designed these covers together. So I'm just going to show this really quick so people understand. These are very purposely done with motion and movement below and stillness above. There's metaphor built into every single one. This is the Texas Hill Country. Casting Onward has Colorado's Maroon Bells Mountains area. Again, stillness. And in hardcover, they're a beautiful set. I mean, the paperbacks sell faster, mm-hmm. but to me, I bought a bunch for myself in hardcover because I think they're pretty. And this is Casting Seaward, and you see this time I use fish to make the movement.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And Casting Onward's going to have the Grand Tetons on the top with the Snake River, and there'll be some very nice trout footage on the bottom. So
that's awesome.
But the paperback also is available in just Casting Forwards in paperback. So
I see.
That's all I'll tell you. And I hope people enjoy them. They're meant to be enjoyed. You'll get to meet my cast of characters, the people that are my friends that I hang out with and fly fish with, and I'm a very lucky man to have these friends.
That's awesome, and I can attest to that. That the what I've read so far of the first book is extremely entertaining, and I can't wait to finish it and get to the next one. So
You can't wait to get your girlfriend to read it.
like I said, that's a good idea. But it's been great having you on. Is there any other last things you want to mention before we go ahead and close her out?
No, just thank you. It's been a pleasure. Hope your listeners enjoy it and laugh with us. Life's too short not to laugh.
That is the truth.
Absolutely.
Thank y'all for listening to the end. And if y'all have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our socials. And I'll leave any links of people or products that we talked about in the description. And tell us what y'all think. Other than that, we'll catch y'all next time.
This has been Wildlife Outdoors. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook at Wildlife Outdoors and on Instagram at wild.life.outdoors. Let's go live life on the wild side.